Now, dividend growth style investments are some of my favorite investments, especially when it comes to investing into ETFs in the stock market. Now, this is because with dividend growth style ETFs, like this one right here, VYM or the Vanguard High Dividend Yield ETF, you can invest a relatively small amount of money and get paid more and more income over the years. And this is specifically because these sort of investments, at least historically, have paid more and more in dividends over time. Now in this video specifically, we're going to go over VYM, one of my favorite high quality dividend growth style ETFs, and honestly one of the best across the entire market. And I'm going to share with you exactly how just a $20,000 initial investment into VYM can turn into a boatload of cash flow later on, along with a massive net worth. So if you're a dividend investor focused on dividend growth, and if you have a relatively small amount of money to start with, make sure to stick around till the end, drop a like down below, and let's get right into it. Real quick, for those that haven't already, make sure to go to the first link in my description and grab my new dividend investing ebook, where I share exactly how I went from $0 invested to now earning over $6,000 on a monthly basis and over $1 million invested in the market. Along with the ebook, you're also going to receive my custom dividend tracker, where you can track your dividend progress on an ongoing basis and reach your dividend investing goals. So make sure to grab yourself a copy of my dividend investing ebook and the new dividend tracker today. It's the first link in my description. Now, even though I'm sure at this point you guys are probably familiar with dividend growth style ETFs like this one, VYM, I still want to go over the basics and share with you exactly how this ETF works and give you some insight on how the performance has been so great over time. Now, the Vanguard High Dividend Yield ETF's product summary says, seek to track the performance of the FTSE High Dividend Yield Index, which measures the investment return of common stocks of companies characterized by high dividend yields. Provides a convenient way to track the performance of stocks that are forecast to have above average dividend yields, and follows a passively managed full replication approach. Now, I think it's also good to highlight some other important facts about VYM. For one, this ETF has around 550 different stocks within it, so this ETF is going to give you a massive amount of diversification, which might be good or bad depending on what you're looking for. For me personally, I love having a diversified portfolio because I don't want to stress out or have to worry about a single stock or 3 single stocks or 5 or 10 having a bad quarter or a bad year. I want to be diversified and know that the portfolio, at least based off of history, is going to keep going up as far as overall value and, of course, income. Now, there's lots of dividend growth style ETFs across the markets, and the cool thing is that you can of course invest into one of them or all of them. I invest into several across my long-term portfolio, but the main thing you're gonna have to ask yourself, especially when choosing which ETFs to invest into, you're gonna want to know the objective of the ETF, the strategy, and of course what stocks, what sectors are going to give you exposure when investing into that ETF. Now, for VYM, as far as sectors go, again, this is going to be very important. Do you want to have exposure to these or maybe not? Basic materials is around 2%, consumer discretionary around 10%, consumer staples around 11%, energy around 10%, financials around 21%, healthcare around 11 or 12% industrials, 10% technology, 4% telecommunications, and around 6 or 7% utilities. So again, for example, if you're looking for massive exposure to basic materials, well then VYM might not be the perfect ETF for you. But honestly, as far as I can see, this is a pretty well diversified ETF, giving you a nice amount of exposure into almost every area or every corner of the markets. Now, I mentioned that it's very important, especially if you're a newer investor out there, to look into the ETF's top holdings and of course sectors, because at the end of the day, you are investing into an ETF that has exposure to the names within it. So as far as VYM goes, the majority of this ETF, remember around 550 different stocks, are going to be made up in things like Broadcom, JP Morgan, ExxonMobil, Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, Home Depot, abbvie, Walmart, Merck, Bank of America, and many others. Now again, just looking at these top 10 names as a seasoned dividend investor, a lot of these names have historically paid dividends and offer dividend growth. Now, what I mean by that is not only has every single company on this list paid dividends for a long time, but also on top of that has paid more and more in dividends long term, which again is exactly why I think dividend growth style ETFs are so powerful, because who doesn't want to get paid more and more in cash flow long term? Now, before we look into the performance of VYM over different times in history, this ETF also has a very cheap expense ratio, which again is why it's so popular. People want to have exposure into high quality names, but they don't want to pay an arm and a leg to do so. With VYM and a lot of other high quality dividend growth ETFs across the market, it's only going to cost you around 0.06%, maybe up to 0.08%, which is almost nothing. Now, as far as VYM's performance, as far as price return goes, we're not even talking about dividends right here. This ETF, because the holdings that it tracks, is up around 15% in the 1 year and currently up around 11% year to date, which is not bad whatsoever. On the max time frame, VYM since around 2006 is up around 145%. And again, that's not even including the dividends. I'm going to show you all those here in a second. Now, as far as dividends go, this is one of my favorite parts about VYM because it offers almost a 3% trailing 12-month dividend yield, which is giving investors a nice amount of yield right off the bat. And And again, because this ETF also has so much upside, at least how much it's grown historically, earning around 3% more or less right off the bat is not bad whatsoever if you ask me. Now, also important to note, around 7% dividend growth on the trailing 12 month, around 7% on the 3-year, 5.8% on the 5-year, and around 7% on the 10-year. So although there are different dividend paying stocks and ETFs across the market that might grow their dividend a little bit faster or slower, VYM is still growing their dividend consistently, outpacing inflation and giving investors more and more cash flow long term. Now, before we go through and I share with you exactly how just a $20,000 investment into something like VYM could turn into a massive amount of cash flow and a massive net worth long term, a $10,000 investment into VYM back in 2006 held on to till around today. With dividends reinvested, would have given an investor around a 1,500% total return or around 16% average annual total return, which is massive. Now, if an investor held on to VYM for around 18.69 years, bought in with just $10,000 and reinvested those dividends along the way, we're talking a $162,000 investment, again, just over 19 years, which is massive. Now, without dividends reinvested, we're talking around 14% on average per year or around $121,000. Either way, VYM has performed amazingly over time. Again, sometimes better than others, but this is why this ETF is so popular and it's for a good reason. Now, lastly, I wanted to show you a real-life example of a $20,000 starting principal investment into something like VYM, which currently yields just shy of 3%, raised their dividend around 7%, goes up around 4 or 5% per year, 30 years invested, around $6,000 or $500 a month on top of the $20,000 principal starting. And again, this could be lower or higher depending on your situation, but let's see what we get long term. So year number one, this $20,000 investment into VYM would earn you around $600 per year in dividends, and after those dividend increases and the $6,000 annual contribution, as well as those reinvested dividends, by year number two, this investor would already be to $27,300 and around $850 per year in dividends. Now year number three, $35,000 of principal, around $1,100 per year in dividends. Again, it seems slow at first, but once the power of compounding takes place, this portfolio is going to spiral larger and larger. Now, to give you an idea, around 10 years down the road, $108,000 of principal and around $4,200 per year in dividends, which now we're starting to get somewhere. Again, this is with a $20,000 investment and $6,000 per year. I can also show you an example with much less contributed. But skipping forward around 20 years down the road, just based off of these numbers and this theoretical situation, we're at $317,000 and around $16,000 plus per year in dividends. By year number 30, we would end year number 30 with a new balance of $941,000 and around $59,000 per year in dividends. Now, this just goes to show that a relatively small amount of money invested into a high quality dividend growth ETF, at least based off of historical performance, which does not indicate future performance, can turn a small portfolio, relatively small at least, into a massive boatload of net worth and income later on. Now, like I said, even if we cut the annual contribution in half to $3,000 per year, this portfolio after 30 years would still end with $572,000 or around $36,000 per year in dividends. Not bad whatsoever, especially like I said, considering this is a relatively small amount of money invested, just $20K. So now that we went over one of my favorite dividend growth style ETFs, and I showed you exactly how just a $20,000 investment could not only turn someone's net worth long-term potentially into a massive sum, but can also offer dividend investors a ton of cash flow later on, I lastly, most importantly, want to hear from you guys down below. As far as dividend growth style ETFs go, what is your number one favorite across the entire market? Drop the ticker symbol in my comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to please drop a like and subscribe for more future content like this. Thanks as always for stopping by, and if you are interested in investing, make sure to check out these recent videos I posted right here.